There's a lot of great things happening at Tennessee Athletics.
I believe this city is going to be upside down tonight.
Season-long party continues on Rocky Top.
Welcome back to another episode of Everything Orange. Since taking over Rocky Top in 2017, he has led the Big Orange back to national prominence and has helped establish Tennessee baseball as an SEC and national powerhouse, leading the program to an SEC regular season and SEC championship title, 4 NCAA regionals, 3 NCAA super regionals, and a pair of men's College World Series appearances in 2021 and 2023. A two-time National Coach of the Year during his time at Tennessee, has had 35 players drafted since arriving in Knoxville. Please give it up for the one, the only Tennessee baseball head coach, Tony Vitello. Tony Vitello, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Everything Orange. Now, the podcast here, we talk about all of athletics, all of our programs within the department. And for you going into your 7th season, how fun has it been to just see the success across all of our department?
Oh, it's been a blast. Until you say the word 7th or phrase 7th, it's gone by fast. And things have changed incredibly fast as well, just on campus in the city of Knoxville. And then the athletic department's undergone a lot of changes in a short amount of time, and I think they've all benefited the people that are on this campus.
And you seem to be just as invested as our fan base. When the men's and women's basketball team went off to the Sweet 16, you were there cheering them on. And when Karen got home from the Women's College World Series, you were one of the first to welcome her back. So to be a part of all the fun that we've had here in Neyland Stadium too, all the games, all the wins, if you could pick one moment, not baseball related, what did you have the most fun experiencing last season?
Yeah, most fun when you're in a suite with Kenny Chesney and Kelsey and Peyton Manning and Morgan Wallen and all these other people, and of course some awesome loyal donors from the University of Tennessee, and we beat Alabama. It's a tough moment to beat, and then I think I set my record 60 time hustling down to the field, and then you get to be amongst the students, the players, and some of the coaches I know for football. So I think that moment was miraculous for a lot of Tennessee people, but it also we had been building on this campus in a lot of different ways, and that kind of encapsulated or maybe it kind of put us over the top, or was that kind of climax type moment that was huge for everybody. But speaking of football games, one thing I always mention is I went one time when we played Florida, and we were a big underdog. We weren't very good when I first got here, to be honest with you. But I went to our game and then went to a Chicago Bears game the next night, and to notice the difference in fan bases was crazy, quality and quantity. And so that's something that really hit home, that if we could win some games, we could tap into this rowdy and enormous fan base we have.
And when you see the success across all of the athletic department, does that almost fuel your fire to match with the baseball program as well?
Yeah, when we first got here, we kind of got a history lesson from the alumni, in particular the 2005 team, which was really the last tremendously successful Tennessee Vol team before we got here. So they update us on things, and they talked about on campus, you walk around the student-athlete cafeteria, and everyone's trying to outdo one another, but also trying to help one another.
Sure.
And culture is a word that people throw around, very often in sports, and it's a culture thing. And I think when you surround yourself with successful people, you're more likely to be successful.
And I want to talk about the culture, because when you got here, that was one of the biggest changes that you wanted to make within the baseball program. From year 1 to now going into year 7, how have you seen the culture shift in your program?
Yeah, it's got that year that's so awkward with COVID, where what do you label that year? But it almost kind of evenly divided what was a building of a program to try and be competitive in the league to where we were competitive in the league. So you have different types of stress and different types of problems, but we feel like we've evolved into a new space where college baseball and college athletics is definitely in a new spot. But we are too, and you're always going to have to navigate through certain waters regardless of what they are. But I think for now, we've got high standards. Other people have high expectations. and plenty of people want to beat us. So the challenge is on.
You talk a lot about loyalty and consistency in your coaching staff. And when you got here, 3 people that you wanted by your side were Frank Anderson, Sean McCann, and Josh Elander. How have they created a foundation for this baseball program?
Yeah, loyalty is, I think that's the most important word in the dictionary. That's a favorite. I travel a lot, and you meet people, and sometimes there's a language barrier, but everybody knows the word loyalty. So I'll ask, what's your favorite word in the dictionary, and that's mine. And a lot of people believe in that word, but they don't stand by it as well as you possibly can. And I'm probably guilty of that too at times. But we've been really loyal to each other, and then I think the university, and it's helped that culture word that you brought up. But those guys have just made me comfortable. I mean, I can sleep at night, and I can do the things that I think are my strengths, and then other things I can just lean on them. With the pitching, you just allow Frank to do his thing, really. And Coach McCann is my mentor, and as much as it probably annoys him, he's kind of my counsel that I always go to, unless it involves something that, Frank has experience from being a head coach before. And then Coach Elander ultimately has taken ownership of the recruiting aspect of things, which is the number one most important thing you do as an athletic team.
And then you add Q and Richard to the group as well. And I have to shout out Woody because he's been there for over 20 years. How do they then help you create that consistency in your coaching staff?
Yeah, Woody keeps us all alive and kicking. So he's the key, and he knows baseball as well as anybody, and of course provides plenty of humor daily as well. But speaking of humor, Coach Q is like a blend between the drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket and Dave Chappelle.
Okay.
So you got the discipline you want, but you also have an incredibly fun environment in that weight room, which is key because there's a lot of sweat, a lot of pain, a lot of frustration sometimes that goes into that. But he finds a way to make it a tremendous environment for our guys to be excited to be in every day, and yet they're being pushed like crazy. And I remember getting out of my car early in our time here, and there was a bunch of kids walking to class that were on our team. And Q got out of his car at the same time, and they all wanted to talk to him and just kind of said hi real quick to me. And I was like, how are you Santa Claus to these kids when you're beating them up every day in the weight room? But he's got a unique way to kind of blend that.
I want to talk about your development as a head coach too. Prior to coming here, you were an assistant coach. You got that experience. Was there something in your 7 years here that you learned as a head coach that you didn't necessarily experience as an assistant coach or didn't know until you got the head coaching position?
Yeah, my answer will shock you or maybe not make sense, but I would say you just have to be much more even-keeled over day to day. Now, obviously, there's moments where it goes one direction or the other, but you work really hard and you invest a lot in this, so there's moments where frustration boils over, or there's also moments where as a team, you basically kind of throw out the window what other people think, and you got to act like a kid, because there's been some inside things that we do in practice that have shown up on Twitter or in a game. But for me, you don't get to live your life in a bubble as much as you do as an assistant coach. Everything you have to kind of have a hand in. And then also, people are going to feed off your vibes. So if you get too high or you get too low, it's going to have a trickle-down effect. And it's tough for me to do because I used to, my coworkers would make fun of me for being too down after losses. And then, fortunately, before Twitter or before people paid attention to me at all, there was a lot of stuff that was probably over the top.
Right. That went kind of under the radar.
Fortunately.
Right. And I want to talk to you about your passion and your energy on the field because it's no secret. Everyone can see it. I'm so curious to know, was that something that you developed as a coach, or did you have that fire when you were a player in college?
My dad was consistently trying to get across to me how important work ethic was and intensity, and it took longer than it should. But when it did, it hit home, and I tried to make up for lost time. And then also, I just wasn't as skilled of a player as the guys I was playing with. So I had to play catch-up, and there's only one way you can do that, and that's, with passion and enthusiasm, whatever you want to put under that umbrella. So kids don't realize it these days, but to struggle is a good thing. It kind of makes you into who you are. And it helps, too, for, Steph Curry to hit a three-pointer. Now he's got more confidence to hit the next one. Mm-hmm. even he, I'm sure, was told he's too short and he's not going to be as good as dad, and he's missed plenty of shots in his time. So kids don't realize it, but it helps to struggle. And for me, struggles meant I had to invest more or try harder, if you want to label it that.
You talked about your dad. Can you let us know how he helped develop you as a coach?
Yeah, I think being around him every day caused me to want to be the one on the playground that wanted to orchestrate who was on what team, and here are the rules of the game and how you win and keep records and things like that. And then you mentioned me being a fan just of Tennessee athletics in general. It's when you're on these university campuses, they keep you young, first of all. But also, I grew up as a fan. I enjoyed the newspaper and, memorizing and reading statistics and knowing the top 25 in every sport. So in our household, with sports being so prevalent, and then the way he managed teams and just managed and developed kids at the high school level, made me look up to him, and also kind of had me playing the game. I had 3 sisters, so while they're playing dress up, I'm kind of predicting what my dad's lineup is going to be the next night for whatever sport it was he was coaching.
How was that? I have to ask, growing up with 3 sisters.
It's for anyone that criticizes me, it's probably warranted, and it all can be blamed on having 3 older sisters, or basically 4 moms at home.
I want to talk now about the team identity, because I think people who might not know you or even follow college baseball, they know Tennessee baseball. How do you think that identity developed, and how have you seen it kind of solidify over the past couple of years?
Yeah, I think it was organic, which is an easy answer, but also an important answer, because a lot of it's very authentic, and a lot of it comes from the roots of the people you mentioned on our coaching staff. Coach Elander was the most talented kid on our team when I was coaching him, but he was also the hardest worker, which is the best combination as a coach. But the rest of us kind of started from the ground up. I mean, Coach Anderson has as good a resume as any pitching coach in the country. Well, he started out on the laundry at a JUCO in the middle of West Texas.
Oh, wow.
So I think all of us kind of had that edge, or wanting to prove people wrong, and also understanding that you're going to go through some struggles and you're going to have to work through those. So I'm hoping that kind of spilled into the locker room a little bit with our players. But also our players were eager just to do better and prove that they belong in the SEC. So maybe it was a good combination. Then you sprinkle in our fans, and it's created a buzz. So whatever it is that has caused people to pay attention, we'll take it, because not being relevant is something that I'm scared to death, because this league can do it to you in a hurry.
So fast.
Yeah, so we'll take the relevancy, if I can call it that.
And can you talk about the identity growth too? You mentioned like the fans and Lindsey Nelson. You were here in the very beginning when the fan base and the fans in the stands looked a little bit different. Can you just talk about the growth that you've seen with the team and then the entire fan base surrounding it?
Yeah, it didn't really exist other than the there's been some diehards that have been out there regardless of weather or record.
Yeah.
And I think they were there, but they were just supportive that our guys were actually trying hard. And we're sitting in the dugout incredibly frustrated that we're not having more success. But I think our fan base, as long as you show you're just as invested as they are, then there's a marriage there. And then if you show them that there's something to cheer for, it explodes, and literally to the point where it maybe is the most explosive environment. Pick your sport, as anywhere in the country.
For the fans watching the games at home, they might see the intensity from the guys on the field from start to finish, but what they might not see is that after every game, they're signing autographs with kids, they're taking photos with fans. How do you help them understand the balance of, I want you to commit to the game, but I also want you to commit to the community?
Yeah, I think, when you're in uniform, you have to see yourself as a competitor and somebody who's capable of all things. And if you're a freshman right now on our campus, you can't be bowing down to a junior or senior when practice starts or you're between the lines. You've got to be competing and, excuse me, I need the old cough button. You've got to be on a mission to earn innings on the mound or earn at-bats. But when that ends, if there's a cup on the ground if you're that freshman, you're low man on the totem pole in that situation. So I don't think you want to get to the point where you're two different people, but there is a separation between competitor and person off the field. And some of the best guys we've had, like Andre Lipsius, who just made his Major League debut, you could almost kind of refer to him as a Boy Scout off the field. And on the field, we get kind of dramatic with some of our labels sometimes, but the guy was an assassin. I mean, he was a pain in the butt for every team in our league. He was our leader, and he was ultra competitive to the point where he was annoying. We would joke about it in the coaching staff. He was annoying. He wanted to win so bad.
Right.
But off the field, he was willing to do anything for his teammates. And then if there was a kid waiting in the parking lot for an autograph, he would not only be willing to sign an autograph, but visit with the kid a little bit.
Sure.
And I think because our guys have created a sense of community between themselves and the fans, it's led the fans to come out in bigger numbers and cheer almost like they're their own kids when they're looking at our guys.
You talked about the Tennessee legacy. Growing up in St. Louis, Missouri, you knew of Pat Summitt, you knew of Philip Fulmer. How have you seen this volunteer fan base accept you as one of their own?
Well, right when I got here, people would ask, what do you notice the most upon arrival? And it was how welcoming everybody is. And it sounds like you're starting your first recruiting sales pitch at Tennessee, but I wasn't saying that to recruits. I was saying it to people in general, and it was the truth. And that hasn't stopped. It's just the people in this area are different. And Southern hospitality exists all over the country or in the SEC, but it's a unique brand here. And again, if you show you're as invested or as loyal to wearing orange, then you got a special place in these people's hearts. And I think, again, there's been that marriage or that go back and forth between that's made our time here special, and it makes everyone want to stay here for as long as we're welcome.
Absolutely. I mean, Peyton Manning even shouted you out in the first episode that we had him on. He said, yeah, you host all my friends. When they come into town, I want Tony to host them. So you've already been a part of that legacy. I think he's adopted you in pretty quickly.
Well, I appreciate that. You want to talk about a host. I don't know how that guy does it. I assume he would just be responding to text messages all day long on his phone, but he finds a way to not only respond to everybody, but he's a tremendous host, and he's one of those. I've had teammates like that before. He's the biggest personality, but it's a unique trait to when there's a party or a gathering to be more concerned about everybody else having fun as opposed to what's going on for you. And maybe I need to practice what I'm preaching there, but he's the best at it.
He is. Shifting gears real quick, I want to talk about last season. I want to hit a couple of big moments for you and the team, starting off with the Arkansas getting swept on the road to then turn around next weekend and sweep Vanderbilt at home. Can you talk about how that pushed momentum for you guys going into the rest of the regular season?
Yeah, you started off pretty negative there. I'm glad you brought up the Vanderbilt situation. But for our guys, they had several meetings throughout the year, and they were searching for their own identity, separate from 2022, this new group of faces. It was a lot of searching, and I think the searching ended during that week that you're describing. And something had to happen, and that's hard to do because you got to make contact with a baseball, or you got to get a guy out that's pretty talented if he's in our league. But whatever kind of magic was in the air, the first evening against Vanderbilt, you got Dylan Dreiling and Kavaris Tears, two guys that aren't even in the lineup every day, hit homers. And then Griffin Merritt goes from who's this portal guy and is he going to live up to expectations to you now have a free meal in Knoxville, I hope, or I assume, anytime you're at my restaurant or, whatever it might be. And I think the key is the guys kept pressing forward, whether it was meetings at Blake Burke's apartment or things I didn't hear about, the will and the continual effort to press on rather than caving in, because that caving in could have very easily happened for our coaching staff, our players, or the group combined. And fortunately, again, that press on was there.
Fast forward to NCAA regionals, you go to Clemson, South Carolina, and you take Clemson to 14 innings to get the win. Can you talk about just the electricity within that team that night?
Yeah, I mean, I kept looking to the left and just watching the mannerisms of our guys, because whether they were in the game or out of the game, everybody kind of had their own little thing going on, whether it was standing in the same spot or routine or cheering on guy. It was pretty special. And there was a moment in that game where I felt a sense of calm, as intense as it was, that this is kind of what it's about. And however, this ends, it's okay. This is pretty good stuff. And I know Vol fans would disagree, as would our kids, if we don't win, but we win with another magical moment that will forever go down in history, not just with our program, but in college baseball with Zane hitting that home run.
Yeah.
And you can't coach that. As a little kid, you practice it in the backyard, but you can't practice it in our practices. So I don't think things like that or Drew Gilbert's Grand Slam can happen unless you just keep moving forward and working like hell, if I can say that, to try and get what you want. And again, it helps when your teammates are acting the way they are. And then we had a huge number of fans there. It's not too far of a drive.
Right.
It was kind of hard to tell which orange is which
Yeah.
at times in the stands, but all you had to do was wait and see, what play happened to see who was cheering. And it was deafening when he hit that home run. And within 1 second, I went from the most excited guy on the planet to having to be the get-back guy.
Right.
Because it wasn't the bottom of the ninth, and our guys were celebrating, as they should, like crazy. So that goes back to my answer. I would have loved to have run the bases myself and followed Zane, kind of like some fans did with Hank Aaron. But I had to kind of make sure everyone realized we had another half inning,
Right.
which ultimately led to 14 innings, as you mentioned.
And then you got to hear Rocky Top being played at the end of the game.
Yeah, our fans were so excited that, we were moving on. And anytime you get to hear Rocky Top, when you're in uniform, everyone's got to admit, I don't care what city you're in right now, there's not a better song going tied into college athletics. But when you're in uniform, and those out there that have done it, it sounds twice as good. It's hard to describe, but you couldn't hear it enough, and it sounds twice as good. I'm sure our football team, you score a touchdown, that's the sweetest noise they've ever heard.
Then you go down to Southern Miss. You get the win there to send your team to the College World Series for the second time in 3 years. How exciting was that win?
It was exciting, and it was also just a relief. There was so much stress built into that. Who's going to host the Super Regional, us or them? When are we going to play? Pitching rotations kept getting moved. Lightning and weather. It was interesting, and it was a volatile environment. Their fans do a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
Frank loves telling all the stories of everything he heard down in the bullpen because that's kind of their most crowded area. But a ton of different emotions. Where it really sank into me and kind of made me feel something I've never felt before was when Griffin Merritt and Zane Denton both went out of their way to come to the coaches and say, this is why we came here. Thank you so much. And you'd like to think, kids come, whether it's transferring or freshman year, because they just want to be a part of the environment as a whole. But when you're that talented and you leave a program you love, you have a vision. And every kid's vision is to go to Omaha and play there. Unfortunately, we were able to do that.
And not only do you go do that, but you get Tennessee's first win since 2001 over Stanford. How exciting was that moment to be able to celebrate with your guys?
In the moment, it was just exhilarating. And when our season ended a couple days after, I told them they can do whatever they want. The brain's a powerful thing. My memory bank will forever stop with that team after that Stanford game.
Yeah.
That's what I'll remember them by, because it was such a team effort and such a level of determination to make sure our season did not end that day. And it was a back and forth game. There were plenty of moments where you could have doubted things, but it was exhilarating. That's the best word I can come up with.
All right, now real quick, I want to do some superlatives with you of some guys on the team. I'm going to say most likely to. You're going to tell me what guy on the team would do it, okay?
Okay, no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. Most likely to talk through the whole movie at the movie theater.
Oh, gosh. Kirby Canal.
Most likely to have the most unread text messages.
Christian Moore.
You
know what? I'm going to backtrack. Drew Beam is awfully slow to respond. So, but either way, they're both really good players. So maybe that's a sign of somebody that's a superstar.
There you go. Most likely, they got other priorities. Most likely to go on a reality TV show to find love.
Blake Burke.
Most likely to fake their birthday at a restaurant for the free food.
Oh, gosh. Blake Burke.
Most likely to get on Aux when nobody wants them on Aux.
Oh, man. I'm going to say Kyle Booker because I love him to death, even though his time is up here with us. But I think he fancies himself a DJ. Those are tough ones. I need a roster in front of me.
Fair.
And, of course, we got a lot of new faces on this group,
yes,
too. But
yes.
one thing that, again, I think has drawn a sense of community with our fans is to be a baseball player, you have to have some personality because we have so much downtime. So, yeah.
And you have a wide array of personalities. Like, it's all across the board with these guys.
Yeah, and I don't know if Kirby would actually be the one. I just know he is a good talker and has a podcast, one of these. I refuse to go on that. There's no way it's as good as yours. But he'll be doing some things, on the field where he kind of creates his own little show amongst the guys. So we've got others that pitch in that way too, and it's fun. Like I said, it keeps you young, and maybe I'll mature one of these days, but not with this group we have this year. It's a fun group.
My last question for you. When you sing Rocky Top, do you woo?
I definitely do woo. Woo might be my favorite part because even I can sing that a little bit, but I do not participate in karaoke. And if anyone is near me, they might see me mouthing the words to that song, but I'm not going to sing it because I have the worst voice on this entire campus. And I mean that wholeheartedly. I have the worst voice. We used to have a group of friends. I was much younger, so if it was late at night and we were bored, I would sing on the guitar. I can't play the guitar and I can't sing, so it was for comedic purposes.
Sure.
So maybe one of these days we'll bust that out for Vol fans and I'll get my hands on a guitar.
Amazing. I'm looking forward to it. Well, Tony, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. We appreciate it so much. And I know I'm early in saying this, but good luck next season.
Thank you so much. We'll take it.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Everything Orange. Be sure to follow us on all of our Vol Sports platforms so you don't miss a single update. But before we go, here's a look at Tennessee starting with tonight. Tennessee volleyball is finally home, and you guys, I am so excited to get to watch them do their thing in person. They play Chicago State in Thompson Bowling Arena at Food City Center at 6:30 p.m. And tomorrow is a packed day. I'll start first with the away events. Men's tennis starts its 3-day Deacon Invite in North Carolina, while the women's team starts its 3-day Debbie Southern Fall Classic in South Carolina. As for cross country, you can find them in South Carolina too for the Gamecock Challenge. Then at home, volleyball goes up against Evansville at 6:30 p.m. And then soccer has a huge top 10 matchup against Arkansas at 7 p.m. So we have to show out, guys. Also, we need to match the energy of both basketball teams' energy when the other week when Jada got that one goal for the entire 90 minutes start to finish, we have to show out. Okay, you guys get the point. On Saturday, football has its first conference game of the season against Florida in Gainesville at 7 p.m. And if anybody needs me, you can find me glued to my TV from noon to midnight. Thanks. On Sunday, women's golf starts its 2-day invitational in Michigan. And finally, Wednesday, volleyball kicks off the start of their conference play with Missouri at home at 7 p.m. So again, show out and be loud for your Lady Vols. Well, that's a wrap on Rocky Top. Tune in next Thursday for another episode of Everything Orange. Bye, y'all.